John just naturally said, he said, well, Kellie's going to be back for next year. And I'm like, I didn't have my soundboard, so I couldn't play What the H in honor of Norm Macdonald. But you seem to think she's just fine for next year, John. Why?
Because last year they won 25 games and Danny White gave her a contract extension through 2028. I mean, I can see why he did it. I wouldn't have done it, but I can see why he did it. So I just don't think he would turn around and then after a season, Tennessee has won 15 games. It's probably going to manage to get in the tournament again. So avoid making history by becoming the first Lady Vols team ever not to make the NCAA tournament. So I just think he will. I just don't know how. I don't know how serious he is about the women's program, what it should be. I look at the program more as Pat Summitt's program. I'm not saying you should be able to duplicate what she did, but I think it's kind of sad that the program has continued to decline little by little. So it really doesn't have much of a postseason presence anymore. Just out of respect for Pat Summitt, I would like to see the program do better because she did so much for the program, for the university, for the entire state, for women's basketball in general. And now you have women's basketball. The game has really progressed. You have some really great players in women's basketball. Obviously, Caitlin Clark comes to mind now, most popular player in the sport's history. And I think that's all of that. I think Pat Summitt, if she were here, she would be really proud of that because she worked so hard at developing the game. But at the same time, the Lady Vols program is in decline. It just doesn't really have much of a presence anymore. And I think that's unfortunate. But I think it would have to be, the administration would have to say, we want to be better. I'm not saying they should insist on you have to make a Final Four every few years, but occasionally make one. And that it's going in the wrong direction right now. And it's going to be up to Kellie Harper to change it.
Okay. I agree with everything you said. So just so people know, Caleb and I may have outlandish views sometimes, but we're never disingenuous. So I don't want this to be disingenuous. I agree with everything that John said, but I'm just going to play devil's advocate with Caleb here for a second. Caleb, that's practically a non-revenue sport, even at their best to break even. The football team, when I covered them, and this has been a while ago, but I would assume it's about the same with different numbers, had to donate $1 million to the women's basketball team so that they would break even. It's a lose money situation. I am Danny White. I am not going to spend money on a lose situation. I'm sorry about the nostalgia. I'm not going to do that. That's me playing devil's advocate. Caleb, you answer. I don't really feel that way. I believe everything that John said, especially about Pat Summitt, but I'm going to play devil's advocate as businessman here. You respond.
Y'all are going to find me crazy, but I think I actually agree with your devil's advocate take, Dave. And I even further disagree with you, John, and I actually disagree with you too, Dave, because I think even with that devil's advocate take, you can actually care about the women's basketball program. Look, the difference between the women's basketball, here's where that devil's advocate take makes it a little bit different, women's basketball different than football. Women's basketball, you're not going to fire a coach until you're 100% sure she can't live up to the goals you want. Aren't we all in 100% agreement now? Don't we have enough evidence to where there is not a chance in the world that Kellie Harper will ever make a Final Four? She's not good enough as a coach. We're thoroughly sure of that.
That's an interesting topic. As Travis says, women are losers, according to Dave Hooker. I didn't say that. So I think I know where you're going. Are you saying if you don't believe she can win a Final Four or get to a Final Four, that you've got to be looking elsewhere because you're Tennessee, much like Duke is Duke in basketball, men's basketball?
I think once you're thoroughly sure, and I'm thoroughly sure she can't, you move on. And here's why I disagree with you guys. Danny White, I've never been somebody that just falls in love with institutional leaders. I'm not that person. Okay. But Danny White's track record, He is the greatest hirer in the history of athletic directors. Look at his track record back to Buffalo. He is the best in the history of athletic directors. He puts Jeremy Foley to shame, honestly, in terms of how good of a hirer he is at coaches. And Danny White, if anybody can find a replacement that we know would be 100% successful and find him for cheap, that's Danny White, because Danny White has done it 1,000 times over. The list of coaches he has found out of nowhere who he's turned into superstars is insane. And
John, let me ask you this question. If Danny White believes in his heart of hearts that the best that Kellie Harper can do is Sweet 16, maybe an occasional 8, but he's looking into the future, and there is not a way that Tennessee makes the Final Four in the next 5 years, but you're still selling out. Financially, everything's good. Is that good enough for Tennessee basketball? Let me ask you, and it's brought to you by Don Self, your Chattanooga State Farm agent. Call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126. Go to donself.net. That's donself.net. Over 40 years, you will handle your claim. Customer service matters. It's not just about price shopping. So if Danny White could see that, an Elite 8 appearance, 3 Sweet 16s, and a first-round bounce in the next 5 years, should he say, yeah, good with keeping Kellie Harper, especially given the fact that it's a non-revenue sport? Should he be okay with that?
Well, I mean, we look at it differently. Danny White wasn't here for the Pat Summitt era. He doesn't understand the impact. He does somewhat from afar, but he really doesn't understand the impact she had for Tennessee, for the school and for the state. And I know it's a non-revenue sport, but I guarantee you she raised a lot of money for that university simply by being Pat Summitt. With all the contacts she made, with all the fans she had, she made a huge difference. And she was not just a great basketball coach, but a great ambassador for the University of Tennessee and for the state of Tennessee. And that's my issue with it, because I experienced all of that. And so I would look at it differently than Danny White does. Now, also to Caleb's point, a guy that's really good at hiring coaches, to me, there would be an ego involvement here. Because he's got to say, well, look at my track record. I'm the man when it comes to hiring coaches.
Yep.
And I don't know if he's ever hired a women's basketball coach. He probably had.
Okay. Too, they were both wildly successful.
Okay. Well, there you go. Research is a wonderful thing. I didn't engage in it before this show, but I think that's so if looking at it in that light, I would say, well, I know I can hire somebody better. And to me, if Danny White, the hiring Danny White, that voice might say, I need to do better. I don't want to just have an okay program. I don't want to just be in the NCAA tournament. I would like to see, to me, that, that's how a lot of athletic directors are judged. It's not just by their football program, but when you have all your, look at baseball right now, you look at softball. Tennessee's got some really good programs going, and you want to be a part of that, and you want to make the hires. And that looks really good on your resume, that we were good in all these sports, not just football. Football is certainly the main thing, but that's why I think it should matter. If you look at it from a personal, selfish standpoint, as an AD, Danny White should say, well, I can get a better coach than this. I think we should be competing for Final Fours every year. He could say that. But I just don't see that, because he gave Kellie Harper a contract extension last year. Now you could say, wow, she won 25 games. She went 13-3 in the SEC. She upset LSU, the eventual national champion. But she was 2-10, against teams that finished in the final top 25. And she lost to those teams by a double-digit margin on an average game basis. That's how you look at, and you look at her recruiting high school athletes. It hasn't gone well of late. So if you look at all those things, he could say, I believe we can do better, and I want us to do better in every sport.
John, I'm going to use this story that I'm not sure I've shared with you real quick, Caleb, and that is Tennessee got Terry Fair because I know I haven't told you this story. They got Terry Fair because of the Lady Vols. So they had pretty much a 4-hour commercial on during the Final Four, and he said, "Man, they seem to take their sports seriously." While I know some people in the message board are saying that as long as football is good, everything's good, and that's the money, and I get that. John, to have a 4-hour commercial on ESPN in the Final Four when nothing else is on that Sunday before the Monday's men's game, pretty big. And you can't buy that. And so if you can break even and get those types of exposures, then you need to expose yourself. Thank you, John.
Well, okay. Oh wait, John, I'll let you
Caleb would like to.
I gotta push back on John real quick because I think the contract extension, John. I think Danny White, if you look at it, Heupel's through 2029. I think Barnes is 2028. I think Danny White believes that if he's not going to fire you, you at least need 5 years on your contract for recruiting purposes. I think he feels that you're playing with one arm behind your back if you don't have a 5-year contract, and then they'll just do the buyout later.
I really think that's dated thinking in today's NIL world. I don't think coaches need a 5-year contract. I don't think that has any impact.
I was thinking that just the other day. I don't think you need a 5-year contract for recruiting. And it's all about the buyout. You can make it a 15-year contract, and if the buyout's $10, then you can fire them anyway.